I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Before we move into our arguments, let us first understand what this motion actually means. A student loan mechanism is a system where students borrow money in order to pay for university tuition or educational expenses. After graduating, they are expected to repay the loan, usually together with the interest. The system is commonly associated with US, where many students rely on loans to access higher education. Therefore, this debate is not about whether education is important because both sides clearly agree that education matters. Rather, this debate is about who should carry the burden of paying for higher education. The proposition team argued that student loans increase educational access and create long-term benefits for society because more people are able to attend university. However, our side believes that to attend university, that educational access should not come at the cost of long-term financial insecurity for young people. Now that we understand the mechanism of the motion, we can better understand the clash in this debate. The proposition team mainly approaches this debate through a consequentialist framework. They believe that as long as society gains more university graduates and economic growth, the harms experienced by individual students become acceptable. In other words, their side believes that financial burdens placed on students are justified. However, our side rejects the idea that young people should carry severe financial burden simply because it may statistically benefit society overall. The pro team repeatedly focuses on access, but they fail to analyze what happens after students graduate. Access alone is not meaningful. Is if students spend years trapped under debt and financial anxiety afterwards. Imagine being an 18-year-old student who dreams of entering university. You are told, yes, you can study, but first you must borrow a huge amount of money, and after graduation, before stabilizing your own life, you must already worry about repayment. It feels like pressure and uncertainty from the very beginning of adulthood. In order to understand these consequences more clearly, we must first identify the stakeholders most affected by this policy. The most impacted stakeholders are students from lower income and middle income families because they are the ones who will directly carry the burden of debt. Other stakeholders include parents, future graduates, and society itself because financial pressure among young people can affect long-term economic stability and social mobility. Under their world, more students may technically enter university because loans make education appear more financially accessible at the beginning. However, after graduation, students are left with debt, repayment obligation, and pressure to quickly secure stable jobs. Imagine graduating from university and instead of feeling hopeful about your future, your first thought becomes, how am I gonna pay all this back? Students may choose jobs only based on salaries, not their passion or talent. Furthermore, poorer students face much greater risks because they often lack family support and financial safety net. And under our world, education remains a responsibility shared by the society and the government, rather than a burden placed mainly on students. Instead of normalizing debt, the government is encouraged to improve scholarships, subsidies, and affordable public education systems. Students are able to pursue higher education without constantly worrying about debt immediately after graduation. This creates a healthier and more supportive education system where students can focus on learning, creativity, and personal growth rather than financial fears. From this comparison, it becomes clear that our side protects not only educational access but also the long-term dignity and the well-being of students themselves. Before we move into our substantive arguments, it is important to understand the values prioritized by our side. Our side prioritizes equitable access to education, financial security for young people, and the belief that education is a right rather than a financial gamble. We believe that a good education system should empower students and reduce inequality, not create new forms of economic pressure during the earliest stages of adulthood. The pro team mainly focuses on overall societal benefits and economic efficiency. Sorry. They believe that as long as more people placed on students become they believe that as long as more people can access university, the financial burdens placed on students become acceptable. However, our side believes that there are limits to how much sacrifice should be demanded from individuals for collective benefit. Education should empower students and improve social mobility, not pressure young people into debt and financial insecurity at the beginning of adulthood. Building on these values, our first argument is that student loans create serious financial pressure for young people. The pro team said that students can simply repay their loans after graduating and getting jobs. However, this argument assumes that all graduates will easily secure stable employment and sufficient salaries, which is unrealistic and in Indonesia's economic conditions because loans must eventually be repaid with interest. Students graduate with financial obligations even before they achieve economic stability. Imagine a fresh graduate who has not yet found a stable job. Instead of focusing on building experience and improving their skills, they are already thinking about what if I cannot repay my debt? What if my salary is too low? What if I stay unemployed for months? This creates stress, anxiety, and fear of failure at a very young age. Furthermore, many graduates may delay important life decisions such as starting businesses, support their family, or pursuing careers they genuinely care about because financial survival becomes their priority. The pro side may respond by saying that this burden is acceptable because society overall benefits from a larger educated workforce. However, our side rejects the idea that severe individual burdens should simply be normalized for collective economic benefit. Therefore, student loan system risks transforming education into a long-term financial burden rather than a tool of empowerment. Beyond financial pressure itself, these burdens are also experienced very differently depending on students' economic background. My second argument is that student loans disproportionately harm poorer students. The pro team argued that loans increases equal access to education because everyone can borrow money regardless of the economic background. Imagine two students graduating with the same amount of debt. One has wealthy parents who can help repay the loans, while the other must handle everything once. Clearly, poorer students face much greater risk if they fail to secure stable jobs. If they fail to secure stable jobs. Therefore, students' loans may increase access on paper, but they also worsen structural inequality because vulnerable students carry heavier financial consequences. And the last one is that education should be reduced heavily, yeah.